New Year's Eve should have ended when his fist connected with my face. The first sound I heard wasn't fireworks, it was Mom's champagne flute shattering against marble. The iPhone hidden in my clutch captured everything who laughed, who danced, and the exact moment Dale whispered, "Don't ruin my night," before he struck. They thought I'd stay silent until morning, but at 12:07, I hit send all, and the fireworks above the lake died as suddenly as his career was about to. My name is Harper Lane, and I should have known the night would end in blood when Dale Porter adjusted his cufflinks for the third time while staring at me across the Rivermont Country Lodge ballroom. The chandeliers cast everything in warm gold, making the assembled guests look like figures in an advertisement for expensive whiskey. I smoothed my speech cards against my thigh, trying to focus on the scholarship fund presentation I'd give at 11:45. Operations manager at Northbridge Fulfillments didn't usually warrant guest of honor status at these things, but I'd co-founded the scholarship 3 years ago, back when I still believed in fresh starts. "Please, Harper." Mom materialized beside me, her voice barely audible over the jazz quartet. Lorraine Porter, she'd taken his name with disturbing speed, looked immaculate in navy silk, but her fingers trembled around her champagne stem. "Don't stir up old grievances with Dale tonight, the contract situation. It's been hard on him." I watched my stepfather work the room, his contractor's hands awkward around the crystal tumbler. Fourth whiskey, maybe fifth. The red flush creeping up his neck told me he'd already crossed the line from social drinking into something meaner. "I'm giving a speech about helping kids go to college. Mom, not interested in his drama." "You reported his site violations last year. He knows it was you." OSHA would have found those exposed electrical lines eventually. Someone could have. "Harper." Dale's voice cut through our conversation like a rusty blade. He stood too close, bourbon breath hot against my ear. "Don't ruin my night." I stepped back, fingers instinctively finding my clutch. The iPhone inside was already recording, a habit I'd developed after the incident 3 years ago that left Mom with a black eye she blamed on a tennis accident. "Just giving my presentation. Dale. Nothing to do with you." His jaw tightened. Behind him, my friend Rowan caught my eye from the bar, her expression sharp with concern. Deputy Cass Morris stood near the French doors, off-duty but alert. Evan Wolfe, tonight's MC, tested the microphone on the small stage they'd erected beneath the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake. "Ladies and gentlemen," Evan's voice boomed, "dinner service will conclude in 15 minutes, followed by our scholarship presentation and then the countdown celebration on the South Terrace." Dale's hand closed around my wrist. Not hard enough to bruise, he'd learned to be careful about marks that showed, but firm enough to make his point. "I lost the Brookline Vista project because of your meddling. $8 million. You know what that means. It means you shouldn't have falsified safety reports." I kept my voice level, aware of the recording catching every word. He released me abruptly, stumbling slightly. The crowd was beginning to shift toward the terrace doors, anticipation building for midnight. Mom touched Dale's sleeve, trying to guide him away, but he shrugged her off. "Need some air," he muttered, heading toward the auxiliary exit near the south wing, the one that led to a narrow balcony overlooking the service area. I watched him test the door handle, then slowly, deliberately, turn the lock from the inside. The ballroom's main terrace doors remained open, guests flowing out to claim spots for the firework display, but that locked side door nagged at me. Dale didn't do anything without calculation, even drunk. Rowan appeared at my elbow. "You good?" "Recording everything," I murmured, showing her the edge of my phone. "Something's off. He's planning something." "Want me to stick close?" "No, stay visible with the main crowd. I need witnesses who aren't attached to me." I glanced at the locked door again. "But keep your phone ready." The jazz quartet wrapped up their set. Evan beckoned me toward the stage. As I walked through the thinning crowd, I felt Dale's eyes tracking me from his position by that locked door, his expression dark with a promise I'd seen before. The scholarship speech cards felt heavy in my hand. In 10 minutes, I'd stand under those lights and talk about giving young people hope for their futures. But first, I had to survive whatever Dale Porter had planned for his stepdaughter who'd cost him $8 million and a reputation he'd never deserved in the first place. The countdown began at 11:59, voices rising in unison as champagne glasses lifted toward the ceiling. 10, 9, 8. Dale's hand clamped down on my upper arm, yanking me away from the crowd gathered on the main terrace. The locked side door he'd secured earlier stood open now, revealing the narrow balcony beyond. My phone kept recording from the clutch pressed against my ribs. 7, 6, 5. You destroyed everything, he hissed, bourbon thick on every word. My contracts, my reputation. Let go. I kept my voice steady, loud enough for the phone to catch clearly. 4, 3. Mom stood frozen 10 feet away, her champagne glass trembling. Behind her, the crowd pressed against the windows, eager for the midnight display. Nobody looked our way exactly what Dale had planned. 2. I jerked my arm free, or tried to. His contractor's grip only tightened, fingers digging into muscle. 1. The slap came as the crowd screamed, "Happy New Year." The sound of his palm connecting with my cheek cut through the celebration like a thunderclap. My head snapped sideways, and Mom's champagne flute fell, exploding against the marble in a cascade of crystal shards. The music stopped. Someone gasped. I think it was the woman in the silver dress standing near the piano. Evan's hand froze over the soundboard. The first burst of fireworks lit up the sky, then stopped abruptly after 3 explosions, as if someone had pulled the plug. I didn't scream, didn't cry. Instead, I stood straight, turned my face toward the nearest overhead light, and let everyone see the red mark blooming across my left cheek. My phone was still recording, catching the timestamp 12:02 January 1st. Harper. Mom started forward, then stopped, caught between her daughter and the man she'd married, the perfect metaphor for the last 4 years. "Someone call security," a voice said from the crowd. Dale's face had gone pale beneath the flush of alcohol. He seemed to realize, finally, that we weren't alone on some isolated balcony, but in full view of 47 witnesses, including Deputy Cass Morris, who was already moving through the crowd with her phone out. She provoked, Dale began. "Stop talking." Cass's voice carried the authority of her badge even off duty. "Everyone stay where you are." The head of security, a former state trooper named Marcus, appeared with 2 staff members. "We'll handle this internally. Deputy Morris, no need to no." I found my voice, clear and carrying. "I want an incident report filed. Now." Marcus hesitated, glancing between Dale and the lodge's management, clearly calculating the politics of the situation. "Ma'am, perhaps we could file the report," I repeated, pulling out my phone and checking the recording. 4 minutes and 37 seconds of perfect audio and video, including Dale's threat, the locked door, and the strike itself. Time of assault 12:02 a.m. Location South Wing balcony access. Witnesses. I turned in a slow circle, making eye contact with each person watching. Evan raised his hand first, followed by the woman in silver, then 3 servers, the bartender, 2 couples from Redwater's Planning Commission, and finally, reluctantly, my mother. "I saw it," Evan said loudly. He grabbed her, then struck her when the countdown ended. "Got it on live stream," added someone I didn't recognize. Holding up their phone. "Was filming the fireworks and caught the whole thing." Dale took a step toward me. Cass moved between us immediately. "Sir, I'm going to need you to step back. This is a family matter." "Not anymore," I said, opening my phone's messaging app. My fingers were steady as I typed a quick message to Rowan. "Open the drive folder labeled Midnight Ledger. It's time." The fireworks should have been magnificent. The lodge had spent $30,000 on the display. Instead, they'd gone dark after 3 bursts. Evan having triggered the emergency stop when the assault happened. The metaphor wasn't lost on me. Dale's moment of violence had killed the celebration, just like I was about to kill everything he'd built on lies and intimidation. "Harper, please," Mom whispered, moving closer. "We can talk about this at home." "There is no home with him in it," I replied, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Not anymore." I looked at the timestamp on my phone, 12:07. In the distance, a siren wailed Cass had called for backup. The fairy lights strung along the terrace flickered in the wind, casting strange shadows across the faces of the crowd. The party was over. Dale Porter's reckoning had begun. The bathroom mirror reflected my swelling cheek as I opened the Midnight Ledger folder on my phone. 3 years of meticulous documentation sprawled across the screen, my insurance policy against this exact moment. First subfolder, physical. 23 photos dating back to Mom's tennis accident. I'd blurred her face in each one, focusing on the bruises, the split lip from last Christmas, the fingertip marks on her upper arms from Easter. Each image time-stamped, geotagged, backed up to 3 different clouds. Second subfolder, financial. This one made my stomach burn with righteous anger. Screenshots of Dale's forged signatures on OSHA reports, claiming safety inspections that never happened. Emails where he demanded facilitation fees from subcontractors, his polite term for kickbacks. The crown jewel, a PDF of the Brookline Vista bid where he'd inflated materials costs by 40%, planning to pocket the difference. Third subfolder, witness statements. Voice memos from Javier, the foreman Dale had fired for refusing to sign false timesheets. A written statement from the accountant who'd quit rather than help him launder money through the scholarship fund, my scholarship fund, which I'd protected by maintaining sole signatory authority despite Dale's repeated attempts to gain access. I created a new document, fingers flying across the screen. Incident summary, January 1st, 12:02 a.m. Location, Rivermont Country Lodge. South Wing assault documented via personal video recording, 4:37 duration witness livestream user, partygoer 2025, security camera coverage South Wing hallway, angles 2 and 3, 47 named witnesses including Deputy C. Morris, badge, NURA 4782. Tag notifications started populating, Evan confirming his witness statement, 3 servers adding their accounts, the bartender providing his angle of view. Each one became part of my digital ammunition. The auto-send queue was my masterpiece. Pre-written emails to Wilcox and Hart, the only law firm Dale couldn't intimidate. The State Licensing Board for Contractors, OSHA's regional director, the district attorney's office. The 3 journalists who'd been sniffing around Dale's projects, every member of the lodge's board, the 5 major sponsors of tomorrow's rescheduled fundraiser, all scheduled for 12:45 a.m., unless I canceled them. I pulled up the financial documentation next. The scholarship fund account showed $247,000 money I'd raised through 3 years of grant writing and corporate partnerships. Dale's attempts to access it were all here, forged withdrawal slips I'd intercepted, emails pressuring me to add him as a co-signer, for convenience, even a recorded call where he suggested using fund money to temporarily cover his business expenses. A knock rattled the bathroom door. Harper, Rowan's voice. "Cass needs your phone for evidence." "Making copies first," I called back, initiating the upload to my lawyer's secure server. 2 minutes. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I opened it to find a screenshot from someone's live stream. Dale's face contorted in rage, his hand mid-swing, my face turned away but clearly visible. The timestamp in the corner, 12:02. Indisputable. I saved it to the Midnight Ledger, then opened my banking app. The scholarship fund needed protection. I initiated an immediate transfer to a trust account I'd established months ago, one requiring 2-factor authentication and a 48-hour cooling period for any withdrawals over $500. Dale wouldn't touch a penny. The PR statement came next, pre-written weeks ago when I'd sensed this confrontation building. The Riverside Education Fund remains committed to supporting our community's youth. Tonight's incident, while deeply personal, will not affect our mission. We maintain zero tolerance for violence and appreciate the overwhelming support from our donors and partners. The fund's financial integrity remains absolute under independent oversight. 100 words exactly. Professional, clean, impossible to misconstrue. I tagged the lodge's security footage request, noting the specific cameras and timeframes needed. South Wing hallway, 11:50 through 12:15. Balcony access door, showing Dale's premeditated locking mechanism. Main ballroom, capturing the crowd's reaction and the stopped fireworks. My final document was the kill shot, a detailed timeline of Dale's escalating behavior, cross-referenced with his business losses. Every time a contract fell through, Mom got hurt. Every time someone questioned his methods, someone got threatened. The pattern was clear, documented, undeniable. At 12:28, I unlocked the bathroom door. Rowan waited outside with Cass and a uniformed officer. "Ready?" Cass asked, her expression professionally neutral but her eyes sympathetic. I handed her my phone, the midnight ledger still glowing on the screen. "Everything's here, backed up to multiple locations. My lawyer has remote access to all of it." The officer whistled low. "You've been planning this." "I've been documenting," I corrected. "Planning suggests I wanted this to happen. I just knew it would." The emergency room at Redwater General smelled like industrial disinfectant and burnt coffee. At 12:40 a.m., the triage nurse photographed my face from 6 angles while Detective Rivera, Cass's on-duty partner, took notes on a tablet. "The swelling's consistent with blunt force trauma," Dr. Marsh said, pressing gently around my cheekbone. "We'll need x-rays to rule out a fracture. The bruising pattern suggests an open-handed strike with significant force." I held still for the x-ray tech, then waited while they documented every detail. The torn shoulder seam of my dress where Dale had grabbed me, the small crescent cuts on my arm from his fingernails, the smell of bourbon they noted on my clothes transferred from his breath and hands, since I hadn't drunk anything all night. "Your blood alcohol?" Rivera asked. "0. I was giving a speech, remember." I pulled up the lodge's event program on my phone, showing my name as the 11:45 speaker. "Test me if you want." They did. The breathalyzer confirmed what I already knew: stone cold sober versus Dale's probable 15 or higher. At 1:20 a.m., Cass arrived with more evidence. The lodge pulled their security footage, crystal clear view of the assault, that live stream user. She sent us the full video. Between that and your recording, we have 3 separate angles. "Harper," Mom appeared in the doorway, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Her makeup had run, leaving gray streaks down her cheeks. "Baby, please, we can handle this privately, like we handled your tennis accident." I kept my voice level, clinical. "Or the time you fell downstairs we don't have, or when you walked into that door that somehow left knuckle marks." Dr. Marsh glanced up sharply from her notes. Rivera's typing got faster. "That's not Dale loves us. He just gets frustrated sometimes." "Frustrated?" I pulled up the photo folder on my phone, the one labeled Mom Medical. "Doctor, would you say these injuries from the past 3 years look like frustration or abuse?" Mom gasped as I scrolled through the documentation. Each photo I'd taken while she slept, or when she thought I wasn't looking. The bruises she'd hidden under concealer. The cut lip she'd blamed on chapped skin. 3 years of frustration cataloged with clinical precision. "Mrs. Porter," Dr. Marsh said carefully, "would you like to file a report as well?" "No." Mom's voice cracked. "No. Those were— I'm clumsy. Harper doesn't understand. I understand perfectly." I signed the consent form for evidence collection. "You chose him over your own safety. Fine. But he hit me in front of 47 witnesses, and I'm done protecting your choices." Rivera handed me a form. "Emergency protective order. It's temporary 72 hours, but it starts immediately. Dale Porter cannot come within 100 yards of you." I signed it without hesitation, then opened my email. The auto-send had triggered at 12:45 as scheduled. 13 notifications already waited. Wilcox and Hart confirming receipt. the journalism contacts requesting statements, the lodge board scheduling an emergency meeting for 8A. The EPO goes into effect now, Cass explained. We'll serve him as soon as we locate. He's probably at the house. Mom's voice was barely a whisper. Or at Tommy's bar. That's where he goes when he's violent, Rivera finished. Mrs. Porter, this is a pattern. Your daughter's documentation proves. Please don't ruin him. Mom grabbed my hand, her fingers ice cold. The business, his reputation, people will talk. The country club, our friends. I pulled my hand away. They should talk. They should have been talking 3 years ago when you showed up at the garden party with a black eye. At 1:35, my phone rang. Wilcox and Hart's night duty paralegal. Ms. Lane, we've reviewed your files. Mr. Wilcox wants to meet at 7 a.m. to file civil charges alongside the criminal case. Assault, battery, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and given the business documentation you've provided, potentially extortion and fraud charges related to his attempts to access the scholarship fund. I'll be there. The PR statement had already been picked up by the Redwater Gazette's Twitter. 300 retweets in 40 minutes. The comments section exploded with stories other contractors Dale had bullied, employees he'd threatened, permits he'd falsified. At 1:50, Dr. Marsh returned with the X-ray results. No fracture, but significant soft tissue trauma. The bruising will peak in about 48 hours. Document everything. These images are court admissible. Mom slumped in the plastic chair, looking every one of her 53 years. Harper, when people find out, good, I said, accepting the discharge papers. Let them know exactly who Dale Porter is. Let them know what he does to the women in his life when he loses a contract or drinks too much or just feels like it. Cass's radio crackled. We have Porter. Picked him up at Tommy's. BAC of 16. He's not cooperating. Shocking, I muttered, gathering my things. The hospital bracelet caught the fluorescent light. Patient Lane. Harper. Assault victim. Not victim. Survivor. And by the time I was done, Dale Porter would understand the difference. The lodge's emergency board meeting at 8 a.m. looked like a funeral. 12 members around a polished oak table, coffee growing cold, while Evan testified about the assault that had ended their premier fundraising event. We had to stop the fireworks, Evan explained, pulling up his tablet. Safety protocol when there's a violent incident. $30,000 worth of pyrotechnics. Canceled 3 minutes in. The evacuation was orderly, but the reputation damage. Why? Board President Margaret Winters, 73 years old and sharp as surgical steel, turned to me. Ms. Lane, Dale Porter's company has the maintenance contract for our East Wing renovation. $2.3 million, signed last month. I corrected, sliding a folder across the table. Page 4 shows his forged insurance certificates. Page 7 documents the unlicensed electrician he used for the ballroom work. Page 12 has the OSHA violations from his previous job that he never disclosed. Margaret's expression didn't change, but her assistant was already on the phone with legal. At 9:15, I sat in the Northbridge Fulfillment's conference room, my direct supervisor and HR taking notes while I presented my case. Last year, I filed this safety report about Dale Porter's warehouse construction, I said, producing the time-stamped document. Exposed wiring, improper scaffolding, workers without hard hats in mandatory zones. Dale knew I was the whistleblower. Last night, he specifically referenced losing the Brookline Vista contract because of my meddling. That establishes motive for retaliation, HR noted. We'll need to implement additional security measures for you. Already done. I showed them the EPO paperwork. But I wanted on record that this was targeted harassment related to my professional duties. Workers' comp should cover my medical expenses and time off. By 10 a.m., my phone had logged 43 messages. 3 scholarship sponsors offering support and confirming their donations would continue. 7 journalists requesting interviews. The state contractor's licensing board opening an investigation. Dale's name trending on local Twitter with the hashtag #BoschMidnightAssault. At 10:30, Wilcox himself called. Harper, The civil filing is ready. Assault, battery, defamation. He's been telling people you're lying, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and interference with business relations. We're requesting damages plus punitive awards. Conservative estimate $400,000. But there's more. More. His business insurance lapsed 2 months ago. He's been operating without liability coverage, which voids every contract he's signed since November. The lodge, Brookline Vista, the municipal building, they can all sue for fraud. I sat in my car outside the courthouse, watching Dale's business implode in real time on my phone. The Brookline Vista project announced they were reviewing their relationship with Porter Construction. The municipal building canceled his bid for the library expansion. 3 subcontractors posted on Facebook that he owed them money, apparently. My assault had given them courage to speak up. At 11, the bank called. Ms. Lane, this is regarding the scholarship fund account. We've received multiple requests from a Dale Porter claiming emergency access as a board member. He's not a board member, never has been. Flag any request from him as potential fraud. Already done. We've also frozen a business account under investigation, apparently. Mr. Porter attempted to use scholarship fund routing numbers for a construction bond. That's federal fraud. My phone buzzed. Rowan had posted the 12-second clip from the assault. Dale's voice clear. Don't ruin my night. The slap. My face snapping sideways. Mom's glass shattering. The timestamp 12:02 January 1st. 20,000 views in the first hour. The comments section became a confessional. Former employees describing wage theft. A secretary detailing sexual harassment. 2 clients claiming Dale had threatened them when they questioned invoices. Each story another nail in his professional coffin. At noon, Margaret Winters called personally. The lodge has terminated all contracts with Porter Construction effective immediately. We're also issuing a lifetime ban. Dale Porter will never set foot on our property again. What about the fundraiser? Rescheduled for next week. Same scholarship, new security. We're waiving all venue fees as our apology. Also, 3 board members want to increase their personal donations to your fund. By 12:30, Dale's lawyer, a strip mall attorney who usually handled DUIs, had called 3 times, each voicemail more desperate. Ms. Lane, we should discuss resolution. Mr. Porter is willing to apologize. Please consider the financial impact on the family business. I didn't return the calls. Instead, I posted my own statement. Violence thrives in silence. Today, we're ending both. At 1 p.m., local news picked up the story. Prominent contractor arrested after New Year's assault. They used his company headshot next to my LinkedIn photo. The contrast was stark, his red face and forced smile against my professional calm. Mom texted once, "You're destroying everything we built." I responded, "He destroyed it. I'm just documenting the demolition." By 2 p.m., Porter Construction's Yelp page had 67 new 1-star reviews. His company Facebook was in crisis mode, deleting comments and blocking users. The Better Business Bureau updated their rating to F. The dominoes kept falling, each one triggering the next. Dale had built his empire on intimidation and lies. Now, with one slap witnessed by 47 people, it was all crashing down, and we hadn't even gotten to the criminal charges yet. The courthouse mediation room smelled like fear and cheap cologne at 3 p.m. Dale sat across from me, his expensive suit wrinkled from a night in holding, his lawyer shuffling papers with shaking hands. The prosecutor, ADA Jennifer Reeves, laid out the evidence like a blackjack dealer showing a winning hand. Mr. Porter, we have 3 video angles, 47 witnesses, and a blood alcohol of 0.16. That's aggravated assault, minimum. Add the public setting, the premeditation with the locked door, and your stepdaughter's documentation of past incidents, alleged incidents. Dale's lawyer interrupted weakly. Would you like to see the photos? I opened my phone, scrolling to Mom's folder. 3 years' worth. Or should we discuss the fraudulent OSHA reports? The attempted theft from the scholarship fund. Dale's face went purple. You vindictive little Mr. Porter. Reeves's voice could have frozen bourbon. Another outburst, and we add intimidating a witness to the charges. His lawyer grabbed Dale's arm, whispering urgently. I caught fragments. Criminal record. Lose your license. Federal investigation. Mrs. Porter. Reeves turned to my mother, who'd been silently crying in the corner. We need to discuss the financial irregularities your daughter uncovered. Mom looked up, mascara streaking her cheeks. What irregularities? I pulled up the bank statements. Dale borrowed $42,000 from your joint account last month. The money you inherited from Grandma meant for the kitchen renovation. It went to cover his payroll after Brookline canceled his contract. That was a loan, Dale started. Without documentation, without my mother's signature. I showed Reeves the forged withdrawal slip. That's fraud. Federal fraud if it crossed state lines, which it did when he paid his Nevada suppliers. Dale's lawyer went pale. We'd like to discuss a plea arrangement. 18 months minimum, Reeves said flatly. Assault in the second degree, 6 months, probation for 3 years, mandatory anger management, full restitution plus damages, and he forfeits his contractor's license for 2 years. That's career death. Dale slammed his fist on the table. I've got projects, had projects, I corrected, pulling up my phone. Brookline Vista announced they're suing for breach. The municipal building wants their deposit back. Oh, and the 3 subcontractors you stiffed, they've filed liens. Your business is already dead. Dale, we're just discussing the funeral arrangements. His lawyer whispered more urgently. Dale's face cycled through rage, disbelief, and finally, devastating comprehension. If he doesn't take the plea, I asked Reeves. Trial, public trial, every piece of evidence entered into record, every photo, every forged document, every witness testifying. The media will cover it daily. Instead of 18 months, he's looking at 3 to 5 years. At 3:45, Mom finally spoke. Dale, just take the deal. He turned on her, snarling. You're taking her side after everything you've, what? Mom's voice cracked but didn't break. Everything you've built with my money, my credit, my reputation in this community. She pulled out her own phone, hands trembling. I wasn't asleep all those times. Harper, when you took the photos, I knew. I was just too ashamed to stop pretending. The room went silent. Even Dale's lawyer stopped shuffling papers. 3 years of bruises, Mom continued. 3 years of making excuses, lying to my friends, lying to Harper, lying to myself. She looked at Dale with something I'd never seen before discussed. Take the deal, or I testify against you too. At 4 p.m., Dale signed the plea agreement. His hand shook so badly his signature looked like a child's scrawl. The terms were brutal guilty plea to assault second degree, 6 months jail, 3 years probation, anger management, no contact order with me, and $200,000 in restitution. His contractor's license suspended pending state review, almost certainly revoked. There's more, Reeves added. The federal investigation into the scholarship fund fraud. That's separate. FBI's white-collar division will be in touch. Dale's lawyer closed his briefcase with the finality of a coffin lid. At 4:15, walking to the parking garage, Mom finally broke down completely. Not the pretty tears from earlier, but raw, ugly sobs that shook her whole body. I'm so sorry, Harper. I chose him. I chose his comfort over your safety. What kind of mother? The kind who was being abused too, I said, surprising myself by taking her arm. But you spoke up today. That matters. At 4:30, I posted the final update. Plea deal accepted. Justice served. The scholarship fund remains intact and will continue supporting young people who deserve better than violence and silence. The responses flooded in immediately. Support, congratulations, and 3 more women sharing their own Dale Porter stories, each one adding to the mountain of evidence that would bury any chance of his comeback. Outside the courthouse, Cass waited by her patrol car. Heard the news. He took the plea. Every bitter pill of it. Good, The EPO becomes a permanent restraining order tomorrow. Sign the papers and he can't come within 500 feet of you. Ever. I looked back at the courthouse where Dale was being processed, fingerprinted, and fitted for an ankle monitor. 7 days ago, he'd been king of his construction empire. Today, he was a convicted criminal with a dead business and a Google search that would haunt him forever. "Don't ruin my night," he'd said. I hadn't. I'd ruined his life, and I'd done it completely legally, with receipts. 1 week later, the Rivermont Country Lodge glowed under a clear January sky. Same ballroom, same stage, but this time, security guards flanked every entrance and exit. The scholarship fundraiser reduxed the lodge's apology for New Year's Eve. At 7:45 p.m., I stood at the podium in a burgundy dress that didn't hide the fading bruise on my cheek. I'd refused the makeup artist's offer to cover it completely. Let them see what survival looks like. "Good evening," I said into the microphone, my voice carrying across 200 guests, triple the original attendance. "A week ago, we tried to celebrate hope and education. Tonight, we succeed." Applause rippled through the crowd. In the front row, Margaret Winters nodded approvingly. 3 journalists scribbled notes. Mom sat at a corner table, smaller somehow, but present. "The Riverside Education Fund has received unprecedented support this week," I continued, pulling up the presentation slides. $73,000 in new donations, 14 corporate sponsors, and a special announcement the lodge has committed to hosting our fundraiser free of charge for the next 5 years. More applause. I was about to continue when movement near the south entrance caught my eye. Dale. He stood in the doorway, disheveled, drunk despite his bail conditions, eyes wild with the particular rage of a man who'd lost everything. Security was already moving, but he was faster, charging toward the stage. "You destroyed me!" he screamed, his voice cracking. "My business, my reputation." The crowd gasped, phones emerging like weapons. Someone screamed, but I didn't move, didn't flinch. Instead, I reached for the laptop connected to the LED screen behind me. "Don't ruin my night," Dale slurred, the same words as before. Stumbling closer, I pressed play. The LED screen lit up with the 12-second clip from New Year's Eve. His voice boomed through the speakers. "Don't ruin my night." The slap, my head snapping sideways. The timestamp 12:02 a.m. January 1st. The ballroom fell silent except for Dale's ragged breathing. He stood frozen 10 feet from the stage, watching himself commit assault in high definition. "Mr. Porter," I said calmly into the microphone, my voice echoing through the room, "you're violating your restraining order. The agreement was 500 feet. Cass emerged from the crowd she'd been waiting, invited specifically for this possibility. Behind her, 2 uniformed officers flanked Dale. "I'm 30 feet away," I continued, gesturing to the security camera in the corner. "That's 470 feet too close. Violation of a protection order while out on bail for assault." Dale's face went from red to white as he realized what had happened. I'd baited him, posted publicly about the fundraiser, knowing his rage would overcome his sense, knowing he'd show up, knowing he'd violate the order in front of witnesses and cameras. "Additionally," I added, pulling up my phone, "you've been drinking. That violates your bail conditions." "Officer Morris." Cass stepped forward, pulling out her breathalyzer. "Mr. Porter, you're under arrest for violation of a protective order and violation of bail conditions." "Wait!" Dale started backing away, but the uniforms were already moving. The beautiful metallic click of handcuffs echoed through the ballroom, the same room where he'd assaulted me 7 days ago. This time, Evan didn't stop the celebration. This time, the crowd didn't gasp in horror. This time, they stood and applauded. "Dale Porter," Cass announced clearly, ensuring everyone could hear. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Dale's eyes found mine as the officers turned him around. "You set me up." No, I said into the microphone, ensuring the recording captured everything. I gave you rope. You hanged yourself. The LED screen behind me still showed the assault video on loop. His crime, playing over and over as he was arrested for compounding it. Poetic justice in high definition. Get him out of here, Margaret Winters commanded from her table. This man is banned from lodge property for life. At 8:07 p.m., as they led Dale away, I turned back to the crowd. The silence stretched until someone, I think it was Evan, started clapping slowly. Others joined. The applause built until all 200 guests were on their feet. No one, I said, my voice steady and clear, has the right to say, "Don't ruin my night," after ruining someone else's life. Tonight, we return voice to the silenced. Tonight, we prove that violence has consequences. Tonight, we take back our power. The fireworks outside began right on cue, the full display the lodge had canceled on New Year's Eve. $30,000 of light and sound celebrating not just a new year, but a new chapter. One where Dale Porter's rage no longer controlled anyone's narrative. Mom stood up at her corner table, tears streaming down her face, and mouthed 2 words, "I'm sorry." I nodded once, then turned back to the microphone. Now, let's talk about the futures we're building for deserving young people. Futures free from fear, full of possibility, and funded by this incredible community. The scholarship presentation continued without interruption. By the end of the night, we'd raised another $120,000. Dale Porter's name wasn't mentioned again. He'd wanted to ruin my night. Instead, he'd guaranteed his own complete destruction, broadcast live to everyone who mattered. The fireworks painted the sky in gold and silver, their reflection dancing across the lake. This time, they played to completion. 6 months later, I stood in the same courthouse where Dale had signed his plea deal, but this time in the federal wing. The FBI's white-collar crime division had been thorough 17 counts of fraud, money laundering, and tax evasion. The scholarship fund investigation had opened doors to years of financial crimes. Dale looked smaller in his orange jumpsuit, the contractor's swagger completely gone. His lawyer a public defender now. Since he couldn't afford private counsel, shuffled papers with resigned efficiency. On the count of wire fraud, the judge announced, "We find the defendant guilty." On the count of money laundering, guilty. On the count of attempting to defraud a charitable organization, guilty. 17 guilties, each one another nail in the coffin of the man who'd terrorized my mother and me for 4 years. The sentence, 8 years federal, to be served after completing his state time for assault. No possibility of early release on the federal charges. Restitution of $3.7 million to various victims. Permanent revocation of his contractor's license. Lifetime ban from serving on any charitable board. Mom sat beside me, 5 months into her own therapy, holding my hand as they led Dale away. She'd filed for divorce the day after the fundraiser arrest, reclaimed her maiden name, and slowly started rebuilding her life. "It's over," she whispered. "No," I corrected. "We're just beginning." The Riverside Education Fund had exploded after the publicity. $2 million in donations, enough to send 40 kids to college this year. I'd quit my job at Northbridge to run it full-time, turning one man's violence into hundreds of futures. Porter Construction's assets had been liquidated to pay his victims. The Brookline Vista project alone recovered $600,000. His house, Mom's house. Really, since she'd paid for it, became hers free and clear in the divorce. She sold it immediately, donating half to the scholarship fund. 3 weeks after the federal sentence, I gave my final victim impact statement. Not about the assault that had been covered, but about the years of watching my mother shrink, of documenting bruises in the dark, of keeping secrets that ate away at my soul. Dale Porter built his empire on fear. I told the parole board, ensuring they'd remember when he came up for review in 8 years. He wielded violence like a business tool. But here's what he never understood. Fear is temporary. Truth is permanent. And the truth is that Dale Porter is a small, vicious man who confused cruelty with strength. The parole board assured me they'd keep my statement on file. Forever. On New Year's Eve, exactly 1 year after the assault, the lodge hosted another fundraiser. This time, I didn't give a speech. I didn't need to. The scholarship fund spoke for itself. 63 students in college, their dreams funded by a community that had chosen justice over silence. At 11:59, as the countdown began, I stood on the same terrace where everything had started, Mom beside me, Rowan on my other side, Cass and her wife raising champagne glasses nearby. 10, 9, 8. No locked doors, no whispered threats, no fear. 7, 6, 5. I thought about Dale in his federal cell, watching the clock tick toward midnight alone, knowing he had 7 more New Years before he'd see freedom again. 4, 3, 2. The woman in the silver dress from last year caught my eye and raised her glass. Margaret Winters smiled from her table. Evan started the music right on time. 1. The fireworks exploded over the lake, all $30,000 worth, painting the sky in gold and silver and red. They played to completion, every burst a celebration of survival, of justice, of futures rebuilt from the ashes of one man's rage. My phone buzzed with a news alert: Porter construction fraud victims to receive full restitution. Below it, a photo of Dale in his booking photo, followed by one of me at the scholarship ceremony, surrounded by beaming students. "Don't ruin my night," he'd said. I hadn't ruined his night. I'd demolished his entire life, legally and thoroughly, with evidence and witnesses and the kind of patience that comes from documenting every bruise, every threat, every crime. The fireworks reflected in the lake, doubling their beauty. Mom squeezed my hand, finally free. The scholarship students danced on the terrace, their futures secure. Dale Porter had wanted me to stay silent that night. Instead, I'd spoken so loudly that the FBI heard me, and now he had 8 years of silence ahead of him, broken only by the sound of metal doors slamming shut. I raised my champagne glass to the midnight sky, to new beginnings, to justice served ice cold with a side of federal charges. The fireworks painted one final message across the darkness, a cascade of gold that looked almost like writing. If you squinted, you could imagine it spelled out 2 words: case closed. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'm curious to know where you're listening from. Are you driving to work, relaxing at home, or maybe out on a late-night walk? Please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear if you think justice was served, or what you would have done in my situation. Your support means everything, and sharing these stories helps others know they're not alone. Hit that subscribe button and let's continue this conversation together.